So yeah, not the best season opener for the Chicago Bulls, which, I don't know, maybe that should have been expected given we know the Bulls aren't exactly vying for a winning season. And as has been talked about before, the Bulls' opening schedule is kind of brutal in that they are more than likely looking at starting the season 0-5, considering they now have the Bucks, Thunder, Grizzlies, and Magic ahead of them for the next 4 games. Although I wouldn't be surprised if the Bulls mess around and win 1 or 2 of those. But I guess when it comes to the first game of the season, you're excited, you're hyped, the NBA is back, Bulls basketball is back, and you want to see your team show up well. And while I wouldn't say it was a disaster of a performance considering they played a superior team on the road, it still wasn't good though. The first half was a little exciting, especially when Zach Lavine started looking like he was going to be the Zach Lavine before they brought DeMar to the team. And I joked on Twitter about how Zach just gave the Bulls a first round pick, maybe 2, with the way that he was on fire in that first half. But then that quickly turned back into being the old Zach Lavine in the second half. Poor shot selection, chucking up threes in transition while being contested, step back threes with plenty of time on the shot clock without setting up any kind of play. I'm not saying Zach had a bad game because he actually was more efficient overall than I thought he would be in his first game back, but for me, it just goes back to the decision making on the court for Zach Lavine. Like even when he was torching the Pelicans and opened up the game going 5 for 5 from deep, a lot of those shots, even though they went down, were questionable shots at best. And it kind of reminded me of that game last season where Zach went off in Detroit where he put up a 50 piece and just could not miss, but the Bulls still ended up losing that game to one of the worst teams in the league because it was pretty selfish style basketball where he wasn't getting the guys involved, was taking it down the court and putting up a shot because he was on a heater. Not the exact same scenario in this one, he did tone it down a bit in the second half, but that was just the vibe I was getting in the first half from Zach Lavine. And I know some are going to say, here we go again with the Zach hating. I've said before, I actually really like the way that Zach has handled himself going into the season and buying into this new direction and doing whatever he can to help the team win. But in this first game, the first game that actually mattered, he just looked like a dude that was doing everything he could to showcase his value in the trade market. 27 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 10 for 17, 5 for 8 from 3, but also 7 turnovers and was a minus 15 when he was on the court. Turnovers killed the Bulls in this game. I won't just single out Zach on that one. I mean, when you turn the ball over 21 times, your opponent scores 30 points off said turnovers, yeah, chances are you're not going to win this game. Coby had 4 turnovers, Giddey had 3. I mean, your primary ball handlers were struggling to take care of the ball tonight. And yes, given the style of play the Bulls are trying to employ this season, you can expect those turnovers are going to go up, whereas last year it was actually one of the few things the Bulls were good at in limiting their turnovers, but the Bulls just did not have a good handle on the offense tonight outside of Zach Lavine going off in the first half. I was hoping we would see more of that up and down, high octane style offense we saw in the preseason where the guys are getting up and down the court, getting easy buckets in transition, putting up a lot of threes like we saw in that final game against the Cavs where they put up 56 3-pointers in that game, but that just wasn't the case tonight. Now to be fair, the Pelicans are going to be one of the better defensive teams in the NBA. And so this isn't a team where you're easily going to be able to just run the floor and rack up a bunch of points. They've got great defenders in the paint and on the perimeter. So yes, the Bulls, they tried to play fast, and they did more so than what we saw last season, but it just wasn't working because they couldn't finish at the hoop as well as they did in the preseason when you have the Pelicans who have great rim protectors in Tice, Missy, and Herb Jones. And then when it came to the Bulls shooting, 29% from deep to start the season. Coby could not find his stroke, went 0 for 5 from 3. He switched things up a bit and started driving once he realized the shot isn't falling, and he did well in finishing at the basket, but Coby not making those shots hurt the Bulls as they really are going to rely on his 3-point shooting and volume throughout this season. He did have 8 rebounds and 6 assists to go along with his 10 points though. And then Josh Giddey, not a good outing for him in his Bulls debut, 14 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, but was a minus 22 when he was on the court. You know, I know a lot of the Giddey naysayers have always harped on how Giddey just isn't a winning player. His team is worse with him on the court. That was definitely the case tonight, as the Bulls just looked really bad and lacked a lot on defense when he was on. And even their offense didn't really gel or run smoothly a bit with him on the court either. That said, it's one game. I'm not going to lump him into this bucket of being dead weight on the court in his first game on a new team with new guys that he's still trying to learn from and how to play with. And that's honestly the caveat I'm going to use for this whole game, really. It's the first game of the season. The guys are still trying to figure each other out, still trying to find their identity in a world where they no longer have DeMar and Alex Caruso. Coby is taking on a new role yet again of being more of an off guard. Zach Lavine and Patrick Williams are back after they missed a good portion of the season last year. And then of course Lonzo Ball is back, who hasn't played in 2.5 years. It's going to take time for these guys to gel, develop chemistry, and learn how to play together. I will say I like what I saw from Lonzo Ball. Picking right up from the preseason, one of the few players on the Bulls that actually had a positive net rating in this one, albeit on limited minutes, 14 minutes, 4 points, 4 assists, was active on defense, pushed the pace in transition, and man, seeing him throw that lob to Zach Lavine brought me back to those good times at the start of the 21-22 season. If we can just see Lonzo continue to start ramping up those minutes as the weeks progress, maybe he starts doing some back-to-backs by the second half of the season, I think that will be a big win for the Bulls with the level of impact he's been able to have in just the few minutes we've seen him play. And actually, to me, the biggest positive from this game, or what I was most pleasantly surprised by, was Jalen Smith. Came off the bench, gave the Bulls some very nice minutes, crashed the offensive glass, was active down low in the post and cutting to the basket. 15 points, 5 rebounds in 17 minutes of play. Gotta love seeing that from your backup big in his first game with the team. Also a guy that could end up being your starting center if the Bulls do in fact move Vucevic at some point this season. Speaking of Vuce though, he had a good game overall. I would have expected him to feast a bit more in this game, given the Pelicans had to play small a lot in this one. Vuce didn't really take advantage of the mismatches as much as I would have liked, nor did the Bulls find him at the right opportunities, but he still managed to go for 21 points, 11 rebounds, and went 8 for 12 from the floor, even hit a 3, which is a good sign after coming off his worst season shooting it from deep. Modest Buzelis got to see the floor tonight, only 5 minutes, but it's something. I would have liked to see him get a little bit more playing time, especially more playing time over Taylor Horton-Tucker. Billy Donovan actually went 11 deep in the rotation in this game, which is a lot for Billy. But yeah, I mean, Modest, his first shot in the NBA was an air ball from 3. Went 0 for 3 from 3 in this game. Not a good NBA debut, but hey, it's his first game. Didn't really get the kind of run to showcase what he can do, given he just was thrown out there for a little bit and then brought right back to the bench. Also, man, you know Javonte Green had to ball out against us and have some throwdown dunks just to rub it in. There were 5 Javonte Greens out there tonight. Unfortunately, though, it wasn't for the Bulls. Anyway, the Bulls aren't going to get it figured out overnight, and I'm sure actually for a lot of you, you're kind of preferring to see this team lose anyway. So it's on to the next one on Friday, where the Bulls will take on the Bucks in Milwaukee. Until then, guys, as always, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.